This was the battle that shattered the hopes of Antiochus the Great and signaled the unstoppable rise of Rome in the east. At Magnesia, two empires collided, one representing the glory of Alexander's successors, the other a new power that would soon dominate the entire Mediterranean. The fate of Asia Minor was about to be decided. After the Second Macedonian War, Rome emerged as a new dominant force in the eastern Mediterranean. But peace would not last long. Antiochus III, known as Antiochus the Great, had ambitions of restoring Seleucid power across the former territories of Alexander. He had recently campaigned deep into Asia Minor and even crossed into Greece, claiming to be the liberator of the Hellenic world from Roman influence. But his gamble in Greece backfired. In 191 BC, he was defeated at the Battle of Thermopylae and was forced to retreat back across the Aegean. Meanwhile, Rome allied itself with Eumenes II of Pergamon, a key regional player, and the Romans were now determined to push Antiochus out of Asia Minor altogether. In 190 BC, the Roman consul Lucius Cornelius Scipio, accompanied by his famous brother Scipio Africanus, crossed into Asia with an army that combined Roman legions with troops from Pergamon. Antiochus gathered his forces near the city of Magnesia at Sipylum, near the Hermus River, preparing to make a stand. This battle was more than a regional clash. It was a contest between two military systems, the Roman legion and the Macedonian phalanx, between the ambitions of a declining Macedonian king and the discipline of an expanding republic. As winter closed in, both sides positioned themselves for a decisive engagement. The plain near Magnesia provided enough space for large formations to maneuver, a critical factor, especially for Antiochus's heavy phalanx and war elephants. Antiochus deployed a vast army. Estimates vary, but ancient sources place his forces between 60,000 to 72,000 men. His core was the traditional Seleucid phalanx, 16,000 men strong, armed in the Macedonian style with long sarissas. He supplemented them with cataphracts, Galatian mercenaries, scythed chariots, war elephants, and light infantry drawn from various corners of his realm. Facing them was a smaller, more compact, but well-organized Roman Pergamon force of approximately 30,000 to 35,000 men. The Romans brought two legions with allied alae, supported by Pergamon cavalry and light troops. What they lacked in numbers, they made up for in flexibility, training, and discipline. Both commanders took care to prepare the ground. Antiochus placed his cavalry at the edges, hoping to outflank the Romans, while his phalanx held the center. The Romans mirrored this, with legions at the core and Pergamon cavalry on the wings. Each side knew that control of the wings would be key to destabilizing the enemy's center. The battle opened with action on the wings. Eumenes of Pergamon, commanding the Roman allied cavalry, launched a rapid assault on Antiochus's left. There Antiochus had placed a mix of light cavalry, Galatian warriors, and scythed chariots. Eumenes' attack was precise. His archers and slingers focused on disrupting the scythed chariots before they could build momentum. As the chariots turned into confusion, the Pergamon cavalry charged and broke through the weakened line. This early success caused panic among the Seleucid flank and exposed the side of the phalanx. At nearly the same time, on the opposite side of the battlefield, Antiochus himself led a bold cavalry charge. Riding with his cataphracts and elite horsemen, he struck hard against the Roman right wing, pushing back the allied cavalry and driving deep toward the Roman camp. For a moment, it looked as though Antiochus might pull off a dramatic flank collapse. But this movement also pulled him far from the battlefield's center, leaving the phalanx isolated. With Antiochus overextended and his left wing in disarray, all eyes turned to the battlefield's center, where the Seleucid phalanx now stood exposed. These 16,000 men, armed with long sarissas and arranged in deep ranks, represented the very legacy of Alexander's military tradition. But they now faced the Roman legions, a force built not on sheer formation density, but on cohesion, flexibility, and brutal efficiency. The phalanx began its steady advance, spears lowered, massive shields locked tight. Their sheer weight and discipline created an intimidating wall of iron. At first, they pressed forward successfully, pushing back the Roman front lines and gaining ground. In open terrain and head-on combat, this was the moment the phalanx was built for. But the Romans didn't meet them with the same rigidity. Legionaries, fighting in manipular formations, gave ground when needed, maneuvered through gaps, and used pila to disrupt enemy cohesion. Unlike the phalanx, which depended on maintaining formation to stay effective, the Romans could adapt mid-fight. As pressure built in the center, the Roman commanders, Lucius Scipio and his officers, ordered reinforcements from the now victorious Pergamene flank. Eumenes' cavalry, having routed Antiochus' left earlier, wheeled around and began attacking the flanks of the phalanx. Javelins and arrows rained down on the exposed sides. Even a well-trained phalanx couldn't pivot easily under this kind of pressure. To make matters worse for the Seleucids, the war elephants placed between the phalanx units began to panic. The noise, confusion, and missile fire agitated the beasts, and some turned back into their own lines. This added to the chaos as they trampled friendly troops and broke cohesion between the phalanx segments. Meanwhile, Antiochus, having chased the Roman right wing and looted their camp, realized too late that the heart of his army was in trouble. He attempted to rally his cavalry and return to the center, but the delay was fatal. The Roman legions pressed harder. Now attacking from both front and flanks, they began to break the Seleucid line segment by segment. Without support from their wings or cavalry, the Seleucid soldiers were left to stand alone, surrounded and overwhelmed. It wasn't a sudden collapse, but a grinding breakdown. Groups of phalangites tried to stand their ground, but once gaps opened in the line, the Romans exploited them mercilessly. The Seleucid army began to disintegrate. What began as a contest of formations had now turned into a rout. By late afternoon, the battlefield was covered in the dead and dying. Antiochus fled the field, leaving what remained of his army to scatter. His great gamble to push Rome out of Asia Minor had ended in total failure. Casualties were devastating. According to Livy, the Seleucids lost over 50,000 men, either killed or captured. The Romans, by comparison, suffered only around 350 casualties, a lopsided outcome that shocked even contemporary observers. Though these numbers may be exaggerated by Roman sources, the scale of the Seleucid defeat is not in doubt. The consequences were immediate. Antiochus was forced to sign the Treaty of Apamea in 188 BC. He surrendered all territory north of the Taurus Mountains and paid an enormous indemnity. The once great Seleucid Empire was reduced to a shadow of itself. Rome didn't annex Asia Minor directly, but it handed control of the region to its ally Pergamon, cementing Roman influence across the eastern Mediterranean. Magnesia was the turning point. It confirmed that the Roman legion had not only matched, but decisively outclassed the Macedonian-style phalanx. The old order of successor kingdoms, Ptolemies, Seleucids, and Tigonids, was now clearly in decline. Rome had arrived in the east, and it wasn't going to leave. In just a few hours of battle, the balance of power in the ancient world had shifted forever.